Hello and welcome to the 7th chapter of the HTML Complete course. Last week, we learned about tables, how to create table, and how to modify them. We'll continue from where we left off in Chapter 7 Forms. HTML borrows the concept of a form to refer to different elements that allow you to collect information from visitors to your site. Whether you are adding a simple search box to your website or you need to create more complicated insurance applications, HTML forms give you a set of elements to collect data from your users. In this chapter you will learn how to create a form on your website, the different tools for collecting data, new HTML5 form controls, and in last we see some important notes of the chapter. The best known form on the web is probably the search box that sits right in the middle of Google's homepage. In addition to enabling users to search, forms also allow users to perform other functions online. You will see forms when registering as a member of a website, when shopping online, and when signing up for newsletters or mailing lists. Form controls. There are several types of form controls that you can use to collect information from visitors to your site, such as text input, password input, radio button, checkbox, drop-down box, and submitting form. Form structure. Form controls live inside a form element. This element should always carry the action attribute and will usually have a method and ID attribute too. Every form element requires an action attribute. Its value is the URL for the page on the server that will receive the information in the form when it is submitted. Forms can be sent using one of two methods: skeptical smiley face, get or post. With the get method, the values from the form are added to the end of the URL specified in the action attribute. The get method is ideal for short forms, such as search boxes. When you are just retrieving data from the web server, not sending information that should be added to or deleted from a database, with the post method the values are sent in what are known as HTTP headers. As a rule of thumb, you should use the post method if your form allows users to upload a file, is very long, contains sensitive data, such as passwords, adds information to, or deletes information from, a database. If the method attribute is not used, the form data will be sent using the get method. Text input. The input element is used to create several different form controls. The value of the type attribute determines what kind of input they will be creating. When the type attribute has a value of text, it creates a single-line text input. When users enter information into a form, the server needs to know which form control each piece of data was entered into. For example, in a login form, the server needs to know what has been entered as the username and what has been given as the password. Therefore, each form control requires a name attribute. The value of this attribute identifies the form control and is sent along with the information they enter to the server. The size attribute should not be used on new forms. It was used in older forms to indicate the width of the text input, measured by the number of characters that would be seen. For example, a value of 3 would create a box wide enough to display 3 characters. You can use the max length attribute to limit the number of characters a user may enter into the text field. Its value is the number of characters they may enter. For example, if you were asking for a year, the max length attribute could have a value of 4. Password input. When the type attribute has a value of password, it creates a text box that acts just like a single-line text input, except the characters are blocked out. They are hidden in this way so that if someone is looking over the user's shoulder, they cannot see sensitive data such as passwords. The name attribute indicates the name of the password input, which is sent to the server with the password the user enters. Text area. The text area element is used to create a multi-line text input. Unlike other input elements, this is not an empty element. It should therefore have an opening and a closing tag. Any text that appears between the opening text area and closing text area tags will appear in the text box when the page loads. If the user does not delete any text between these tags, this message will get sent to the server along with whatever the user has typed. Some sites use JavaScript to clear this information when the user clicks in the text area. The calls attribute indicates how wide the text area should be, measured in numbers of characters. The rows attribute indicates how many rows the text area should take up, vertically. Radio button. Radio buttons allow users to pick just one of a number of options. The name attribute is sent to the server with the value of the option the user selects. When a question provides users with options for answers in the form of radio buttons, the value of the name attribute should be the same for all of the radio buttons used to answer that question. The value attribute indicates the value that is sent to the server for the selected option. The value of each of the buttons in a group should be different, so that the server knows which option the user has selected. The checked attribute can be used to indicate which value, if any, should be selected when the page loads. The value of this attribute is checked. Only one radio button in a group should use this attribute. Checkbox. Checkboxes allow users to select and unselect one or more options in answer to a question. The value attribute indicates the value sent to the server if this checkbox is checked. The checked attribute indicates that this box should be checked when the page loads. If used, its value should be checked. Friends, if you have any questions, please leave them in the comments section and I will try to answer them. The notes and source code links can be found in the description below. Please, subscribe to the channel, it has inspired me to make a new video. Remember to like and share. Drop-down list box. A drop-down list box, also known as a select box, allows users to select one option from a drop-down list. The select element is used to create a drop-down list box. It contains two or more option elements. Name. The name attribute indicates the name of the form control being sent to the server, along with the value the user selected. The option element is used to specify the options that the user can select from. The words between the opening option and closing option tags will be shown to the user in the drop-down box. The option element uses the value attribute to indicate the value that is sent to the server along with the name of the control if this option is selected. The selected attribute can be used to indicate the option that should be selected when the page loads. The value of this attribute should be selected. If this attribute is not used, the first option will be shown when the page loads. If the user does not select an option, then the first item will be sent to the server as the value for this control. Multiple select box. You can turn a drop-down select box into a box that shows more than one option by adding the size attribute. Its value should be the number of options you want to show at once. In the example, you can see that 3 of the 4 options are shown. You can allow users to select multiple options from this list by adding the multiple attributes with a value of multiple. File input box. If you want to allow users to upload a file, for example an image, video, MP3, or a PDF, you will need to use a file input box. This type of input creates a box that looks like a text input followed by a browse button. When the user clicks on the browse button, a window opens up that allows them to select a file from their computer to be uploaded to the website. When you are allowing users to upload files, the method attribute on the form element must have a value of post. You cannot send files using the HTTP GET method. When a user clicks on the browse button, the presentation of the window that allows them to browse for the file they want to upload will match the windows of the user's operating system. You cannot control the appearance of these windows. Submit button. Type equal to submit. The submit button is used to send a form to the server. It can use a name attribute, but it does not need to have one. The value attribute is used to control the text that appears on a button. It is a good idea to specify the words you want to appear on a button because the default value of buttons on some browsers is submit query, and this might not be appropriate for all kinds of form. Image button. Type equal to image. If you want to use an image for the submit button, you can give the type attribute a value of image. The src, width, height, and all attributes work just like they do when used with the img element. Button and hidden control. The button element was introduced to allow users more control over how their buttons appear, and to allow other elements to appear inside the button. This means that you can combine text and images between the opening and closing button tag. Input type equal to hidden. This example also shows a hidden form control. These form controls are not shown on the page, although you can see them if you use the View Source option in the browser. They allow web page authors to add values to forms that user cannot see. For example, a web page author might use a hidden field to indicate which page the user was on when they submitted a form. Labeling form control. When introducing form controls, the code was kept simple by indicating the purpose of each one in text next to it. However, each form control should have its own label element, as this makes the form accessible to vision-impaired users. The label element can be used in two ways. It can wrap around both the text description and the form input, as shown on the first line of the example, and be kept separate from the form control and use the for attribute to indicate which form control it is a label for, as shown with the radio buttons. The for attribute states which form control the label belongs to. Note how the radio buttons use the ID attribute. The value of the ID attribute uniquely identifies an element from all other elements on a page. The value of the for attribute matches that of the ID attribute on the form control it is labeling. This technique using the for and ID attributes can be used on any form control. When a label element is used with a checkbox or radio button, users can click on either the form control or the label to select. The expanded clickable area makes the form easier to use. The position of the label is very important. If users do not know where to enter information or what information to enter, they are less likely to use the form correctly. Grouping, form element, field set. You can group related form controls together inside the field set element. This is particularly helpful for longer forms. Most browsers will show the field set with a line around the edge to show how they are related. The appearance of these lines can be adjusted using CSS. Legend. The legend element can come directly after the opening field set tag and contains a caption which helps identify the purpose of that group of form controls. HTML5, form validation. You have probably seen forms on the web that give users messages if the form control has not been filled incorrectly. This is known as form validation. Traditionally, form validation has been performed using JavaScript. But HTML5 is introducing validation and leaving the work to the browser. Validation helps ensure the user enters information in a form that the server will be able to understand when the form is submitted. Validating the contents of the form before it is sent to the server helps reduce the amount of work the server has to do, and enables users to see if there are problems with the form faster than if validation were performed on the server. HTML5 date input. Many forms need to gather information such as dates, email addresses, and URLs. This has traditionally been done using text inputs. HTML5 introduces new form controls to standardize the way that some information is gathered. Older browsers that do not recognize these inputs will just treat them as a single-line text box. Type equal to date. If you were asking the user for a date, you can use an input element and give the type attribute a value of date. This will create a date input in browsers that support the new HTML5 input types. HTML5, email and URL input. HTML5 has also introduced inputs that allow visitors to enter email addresses and URLs. Browsers that do not support these input types will just treat them as text boxes. Type equal to email. If you ask a user for an email address, you can use the email input. Browsers that support HTML5 validation will check that the user has provided information in the correct format of an email address. Some smartphones also optimize their keyboard to display the keys you are most likely to need when entering an email address, such as the @ symbol. Type as equal to URL. A URL input can be used when you are asking a user for a web page address. Browsers that support HTML5 validation will check that the user has provided information in the format of a URL. Some smartphones also optimize their keyboard to display the keys you are most likely to need when entering a URL. HTML5 search input. If you want to create a single-line text box for search queries, HTML5 provides a special type of input for that purpose. Type equal to search. If you want to create a single-line text box for search queries, HTML5 provides a special search input. To create the HTML5 search box, the input element should have a type attribute whose value is search. Older browsers will simply treat it like a single-line text box. Placeholder. On any text input, you can also use an attribute called placeholder whose value is text that will be shown in the text box until the user clicks in that area. Older browsers simply ignore this attribute. Practice set forms. This is a feedback and newsletter sign-up form. It employs a number of different form controls. Let's put it into practice. As usual, write the HTML, head, and title elements. Then add a body tag. We'll need to make a form. As a result, use the form element with action and method attribute. As an example, we need to group some elements, so we'll use the field set tag. Then, use the legend element. Put a label on it. We want a name, so we'll use an input element with a value text in the type attribute. Set the size and maximum length. The output can be seen on the right side. Repeat the process with email. And then enter the email value into the type attribute. Another grouping of elements can be seen in the example. Use the field set tag once more, followed by the legend element. It is now time to include the question and its options. Use the label element for the question and the select element for the options. Set a name and a value for the unique ID. Using the option tag, we provide 4 options. Set a value for each one. On the right side, we can see how the option appears. Then, as shown in the example, we must use the radio button for the next question. Enter radio as a value in the type attribute to accomplish this. To set all 3 options, use the same method. Create new label comments. We must create a text area. Set the rows and calls values in the text area element. It's time to set up the subscribe option. Use the checkbox value in the type attribute to accomplish this. Set the submit value in the type attribute if we want a submit button. So, in this example, I tried to cover all methods. If you have any questions, please leave them in the comments section. Let's go over some of the notes in the summary. When you want to collect information from visitors, you'll need a form, which is contained within a form element. Name, value pairs are used to send information from a form. Each form control is named, and the text entered by the user or the values of the options selected are sent to the server. HTML5 adds new form elements, making it easier for visitors to fill out forms. That concludes Chapter 7 Forms. I'll see you in Chapter 8, Extra Markup.